Hi everyone, welcome back to the What Coat Club. Muskan and I are back today, and we're going to be talking about Case Western College or University, overall, and then specifically their pre-professional scholars program, which is their BSMDs program. So, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. And we post out an episode every 2 weeks. So, as some of you may know or may not know, Muskan is currently in her third year of medical school at Case Western, where she matriculated from that pre-professional scholars program. So, she's going to be giving us all of her advice and everything that she knows. This is like truly her expertise here. Um, but before I let her kind of dive in, just as a background, this is a popular program. It's something that almost all of our students have on their list, namely for their excellent medical education, the numerous opportunities that they have available, specifically for in Northeastern Ohio, and then for healthcare. So a lot of kids go here, not even in the PPSP program. A lot of kids just apply only for the school and not even for the program. Most kids apply for the program, but as she'll get into, highly selective. But we're gonna chat with her and she's gonna kind of give us her expertise about this. So I think the number one thing that we get from students and parents is about the acceptance criteria and what they look for, specifically for the pre-professional scholars program. So what do you have for us there?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I just want to start with a disclaimer that it's really hard to predict, especially with such competitive programs. What is that it factor that they're looking for? Or, what is the reason that someone gets an interview over, a different applicant? And, even to this day, like I'm still shocked that I was offered an interview and then at some point admission too. So it's really hard to pinpoint, exactly what the admissions committee liked about the student, but I'm gonna go over just some general trends that I've noticed within my own class and classes above and below me, just so that, students can know what like the average PPSP student looks like. So first of all, they're definitely looking for high achieving students. Academically, this is kind of the first screening measure that a lot of programs will use. So you want to make sure that, you have at least a 1520 SAT, which sounds daunting, but I personally have not heard of people getting in with a score below that. Um, and honestly speaking, maybe even 1550 plus if possible, but I think 1520 would be like the goal score to go for. As close to a 4.0 GPA as possible. Um, you know, Schools are oftentimes understanding if you get like, a B on your transcript one or two times, and obviously that wouldn't be a 4.0, but get as close as possible. And then finally, many APs, many honors classes. If your school offers IB, then take that. They just want to see that you weren't just taking easy classes to get your GPA up, that, you can really handle a rigorous academic schedule, that you are worthy of, um, a spot in med school. So, um, as close to you know, a very full schedule of APs as you can get. Um, and then another thing that they look for are leadership qualities. So many people in my cohort, they won national science fairs. I'm sure a lot of people have heard of like ISEF, and I'm sure there's others. I don't remember anymore what um the acronyms were for all of them, but that was a very popular thing for people to do. People started clubs at their schools or even at the regional or national level. Some were even recruited athletes. I'm pretty sure that there's people who were like on the cross country team or the soccer team, on the tennis team, and they were all PPSP students. So they really do look for people who are like leaders in what they do. And they just want to see that you have the commitment to excel at something. You put in the time to really get, excellent at what you are passionate about. Um, Another thing that they're looking for, which, is probably not a surprise to most people, but they're looking for, volunteering, clinical experiences, research, kind of all the typical pre-med activities, but they do want to see depth of involvement. Did you just volunteer at a hospital or did you hold a leadership position within the volunteer program? Did you just shadow or did you take initiative to read up on interesting patient cases and then the doctor that you shadowed writes that in your letter of recommendation? So, it's not just showing up to these activities, but it's like really taking initiative and showing interest in the activities you're doing. And then I guess a little bit of insider advice. My cohort was about 16 people who were accepted. And in recent times, it's gotten even more competitive. There's more applicants now. In one of our previous podcasts, we discussed that it's just been trending upwards in terms of how many people are applying to colleges and these types of programs. And they've also lowered the size of the cohorts, so they're now closer to 10-ish students. So that's just something to keep in mind. A lot of these things that I say, um, for most students, I understand that it can be very difficult to get all of these things on your application, but if you want a really solid shot at this program, this is what you need to be doing. And, the earlier you get into Moon Prep, the earlier you start working with your counselor, we can make sure that you are checking these things off of your list. And finally, this is just anecdotal advice. I know other people who are in my program might have been told different things. It's really just what I heard. But when I toured case, I was told by an admissions officer that they want to see that you've immersed yourself in the healthcare setting. So this basically means that, research is very important. A lot of our students do research, but it doesn't teach you about the day-to-day workings of what a healthcare professional does. According to case, like they would love to see research. I myself did research in high school, but even more important than that is clinical experiences. So shadowing, trying to get into a clinic and actually see, what patients are like. And being able to talk about that in your essay and interview. So making sure that, you're not just devoting all your time to research. I see this all the time where students have like 15 research projects, which is obviously an over exaggeration, but they have like 10 hours of shadowing. And I'm like, okay, well, being a doctor is not like going to a research lab. So just make sure that you're finding a good balance because they are going to ask you about your clinical experiences.
Awesome. So you said, you were shocked that you got an interview, which I think that was a humble way of saying it. But talk to me a little bit about interview day and like how important it is to excel at that specifically. So a lot of times, we'll say, essays are going to get you there, everything else is going to get you there, but then obviously once you get to the interview, it's a whole nother ballgame. So talk to us a little bit about that process.
Yeah, sure. So, interview day, it's definitely very nerve-wracking. I remember my interview. I had like a little bit of an aside. I had a really funny thing happen. My interview was in 2020, right when COVID hit, and it was scheduled for, I believe it was March 13th, which is like the day that like the world shut down essentially. So they moved it to Zoom last minute, and it was like the first time that they were ever doing virtual interviews. So all of that being said, this is just a disclaimer that my interview experience might not be fully representative of the interview experience that students have nowadays, but I have talked to a lot of students who have interviewed in more recent years past. And these are kind of like the tips that I've gotten from them, or like, an understanding of what the interview day breakdown looks like. So, like I said, it's virtual now. I think they might offer like, if you get in an admitted student stay, but that I'm not 100% sure about. I know they do that for the med school, but I don't know if they do that for PPSP specifically. But that being said, it is a virtual interview. You want to be professional at all times. You will have an informal session with current students, and I have volunteered at some of these sessions as well. And, all of the students, they are always acting respectful and courteous. And of course you can be candid. You can, I've had students ask me about what is the food like at Case, or like, how is the transportation like, which is, more definitely a more casual question. You don't have to be asking just super serious questions the whole time. But also don't get too casual and too friendly with the student leaders that are going to be on the call with you because, they're at the end of the day, like they are still evaluating you within a professional setting. They're not there to become your best friend. And you just want to make sure that you're respectful, that you're calm, you're courteous, and you just show all of the wonderful qualities that you have that will make you an excellent physician in the future. Um, Another thing is that if you do a group interview, you also want to, be courteous and a team player. I think one trap that a lot of students fall into with these group style interviews is that, they just get really stressed out because they want to show their leadership qualities and they'll start talking over everybody and they'll, just try to take over because and which is understandable too, because you do want to show some level of leadership and taking initiative. But you need to find a good balance between doing that and also, just being a team player to, stay calm, stay collected, take other people's ideas into account as well. You're not the only person running the show, and you will seem way more effective if you can, for example, when everyone's done talking and your team needs to come to an answer together, maybe you can synthesize that information. You can be the one who steps up to do that. Just read the room, social awareness is a really big part of these virtual interviews. So, this is something that you can just like, ask your moon prep counselor for some tips as well and do some mock interviews. But this is just something that will come with practice. So the more mock interviews you do, the more actual interviews you do, you'll get better at understanding how these interview days work. And then finally, I kind of already like mentioned this, but practice, you should know why you want to be a doctor. Why do you want to do a combined program? Why do you want to do PPSP specifically? Why do you want to live in Ohio for 8 years? And why do you want to do all of your education and training at Case? Just have good answers for these. Ask your moon prep counselor for help. Some of the questions I remember being asked were like, literally about Ohio, and I'm not from Ohio. So I was really glad that I had done a little bit of research, what there is to do around here, and to really convince them that I would be willing to move. And, I mean, I really do love it here now, but a lot of students might just be thrown off by a question like that. So do a comprehensive review of the program, the city, the opportunities available to you so that you can truly answer any question that's thrown at you.
Awesome. Yeah, and Moon Prep, as you said, offers interview prep. So definitely talk to us for help. It's super, as you said, super, super important to have that practice in. So a lot of students, they do apply for the PPSP, but obviously we know highly competitive. So with most PSMDs, you get into the school first, and then you find out whether you're moving on with the BSMD application process. So we do have quite a few students that end up going there for undergrad because it is such a strong, school for pre-medicine. So I know obviously in your time there, you've spent some time with non-PPSP students. So what's your perspective on what their experience is like?
Yeah, I mean, the undergrad experience is really what you make of it. In terms of like the PPSP student experience, starting off with that, there really isn't like one major you have to do. People major in biology. I majored in medical anthropology. There's majors in bioethics, economics, a lot of things that people majored in. Even with extracurriculars, I was on a dance team. I did some healthcare experiences, which is important, and it'll say that in your contract. I believe my contract said that I had to like volunteer. No, sorry, not volunteer. I had to shadow 3 different specialties and also that I had to be involved in healthcare experiences, but like you're not, as strictly tied to that as a traditional pre-med might be. So you really have the opportunity to branch out, and then explore as many opportunities as possible. I did study abroad as well, or I did like research abroad over summer, and every opportunity that's available to any other undergrad is available to you. And you're fully integrated as an undergrad student, which is super nice. No one would know that you're in PPSP unless you tell them, which is kind of nice because you can make friends outside of PPSP. You can be friends with people in your class. It like really doesn't matter. There's no, weird separation. I know some schools like you're only in classes with your BSMD cohort, and I do think that that could be, a little bit isolating at times. So that's one thing that I really loved about Case. Now, talking about like just the general undergrad experience, everything I said about PPSP pretty much, stands true. I had plenty of friends who were not in PPSP. I had friends from high school join me at Case, and they did very similar things to me. They did extracurriculars that weren't necessarily all research and um, like shadowing, and they really branched out. They tried new opportunities. They had majors that weren't necessarily always healthcare aligned, and many of them have become successful at getting into medical school and, starting their training to become a physician. So the undergrad experience overall, like if I could sum it up, is just super flexible, really easy to mold into the experience that you want it to be.
Awesome. I know when students are kind of deciding between which BSMDs to apply to and what's going to be a good fit for them, something that really comes up a lot is gap years, and kind of the requirements to matriculate and other like kind of key elements of the program. So, in terms of those kind of specifics to case, um, what do you, what insight do you have there?
Yeah, that's a really good question because I think sometimes students are like, oh, well, I don't really want to apply because it's an 8-year program and you don't have like, you know, yes, you don't have like that acceleration of becoming a physician that a lot of students look for. But there are still ways that you can have somewhat of a gap year and finish in 8 years. So the way that it works is that 8 years have to be spent at case, or sorry, 8 years must be spent between the year that you get in and the year that you get your MD. So the one optional or the one more flexible year that you have is your fourth year of undergrad. So if you happen to graduate early, you can use that fourth year of undergrad as what they call is an experience year. Um, and they just want you to do something that is, meaningful academically and will contribute to your growth and will allow you to become the best physician possible. So in my fourth year, I got my master's. I know people who worked jobs, some people traveled, some people did research full time. Honestly, the opportunities are super like, so quite endless. You just have to get it approved from the board. I know this I don't know the exact program she did, but there was like some girl that went to Spain for a year and learned how to cook because she was really interested in nutrition, and nutrition is obviously very important to a physician's job. So, it's really easy to get whatever you want approved. You just need to make sure that it truly does align with your professional goals. But as long as you can make a case for it, you'll be able to have that experience here built in as well.
Awesome. So, what about matriculating into med school?
Yeah, so I think that these are the most updated stats, but your contract will lay everything out for you if you get accepted as to what is required for you to be able to gain acceptance into medical school or into Case Western Medical School. Um, and you will have a little bit of time, between when you get that contract and when you have to make a decision by. So you can review all of these things with your moon prep counselor. But as of today, the stats are that if you are to matriculate from Case Western undergrad to Case Western School of Medicine, and you are also within the PPSP program, you need to get a 3.7 regular GPA, a 3.7 biology, physics, chemistry, math GPA, and a new addition is that they have also recently required the MCAT, which is you would need a 511 MCAT. And this MCAT requirement is new, so that's why like the MCAT score is also like on the lower end of what you would expect from a school of this caliber. Um, Case Western's average MCAT in the year that I matriculated to the School of Medicine was a 518. So that being considered, and also considering the fact that, you would need to get probably around um, a 510-ish to be competitive for a lot of MD schools in the US, a 511 is a very reasonable score. So I would not let yourself get scared off by that number if you're considering this program. Also, you still need to technically apply through AMCAS. Like, you need to fill out all of the information, everything that you did in undergrad, and just, complete it on time. Don't be lazy. Put thought into your responses, and do the interview process, and you'll be just fine. But, there are definitely times where they've had like concern for just like not putting enough effort in. And that's something that you just want to make sure that you're really on top of, make sure that undergrad, you're not just, like dozing off, be involved in cool activities, cool experiences. As a doctor, you're always going to keep learning. So make sure to always, seek out new opportunities and make sure you present them well when you're doing your formal application process. And then overall, like med school in general, case med is a relatively, chill med school, which, I mean, I guess there's probably no really chill med schools, but I'd say students are very happy. There's high pass rates for board exams. There's a pass-fail curriculum, which makes a big difference. Lots of research opportunities. Honestly, there's so many opportunities here that you'll never feel like you're competing against people. Super collaborative environment. And because there's so many hospitals in this area, there's just so many people that will want to invest in your success. Lots of mentors and people who want to genuinely teach you and make you an excellent doctor. So, for all of those reasons, Case Western, for all intents and purposes, is a relatively chill med school. It's a place where I truly think that anyone can be happy.
That's some great insight. I know things can change, but it's helpful to say that you um have a contract. So everything's kind of laid out for you in advance. So you know exactly what is expired, or what is required, expected. So what are kind of anything else you have for us? Like I think that this has been super, super helpful. Um, I know, like we said, if you don't get into PPSP, but you still get into undergrad, you said you have a lot of friends that joined you there, and that was great. But anything else, any other insight or any other like key features of the program that you think are important for students to know?
Yeah, I mean, just to recap, CASE is a excellent, excellent program. Excellent medical training. It's really unparalleled. It's the number one medical school in Ohio, and it's a top 25 med school nationwide. Always ranks really high if that's, something that matters to you and things that you look at. Lots of research funding, which is really great for students looking to go into competitive specialties. And they have really good residency placement too. I know this, it's probably like too early to be looking at residency placement in high school. But if that's something that really concerns you, I think like honestly, residency placement is probably one of the best ways to look at the caliber of a school, um, rather than any other metric. And like fun fact, Case has one of the best neurosurgery match rates in the country. In fact, I have heard that it has the highest neurosurgery match rate in the country, which I don't know if I can technically fully prove that because I haven't seen it in writing, but I have been told this by many mentors and even doctors who work at Case. And neurosurgery is one of the hardest specialties to get into. And, like I've said, lots of flexibility. Genuinely, students are super, super happy overall with low stress. I mean, obviously there will be stressful moments. You are training to become a doctor, but they are really here to support you, and a lot of students manage it well. And then to talk about your other point about, Case undergrad on its own Also consider this as an option. I mean, when the PPSP interview decisions come out, they'll give you an option of if you'd like to still be considered to case undergrad and not just their BSMD. So if you don't get an interview to the BSMD, they'll ask you if you still want to be considered for undergrad. And I would say, yeah, like, there's no extra fees to it. There's nothing else. Just say yes. And when you have all of your options and you're weighing them, I definitely think case should be towards the top of your list if you're looking to go the traditional pre-med route. Lots of my friends, like I said, were non-PPSP, and they got into med school, very happy, very successful people, and you'll still have access to all of the same opportunities that PPSP students have access to.
Awesome. I think this is super helpful. Well, I appreciate you giving us all of your insight and going through every single piece of it. But I know case is such a huge apply for a ton of our students. So definitely, definitely helpful. So we appreciate that. But as always, don't forget to like and subscribe for more BSMD content every 2 weeks.